Good afternoon. I appreciate everyone coming today. I'm proud to be here with the Lieutenant Governor. We've got a great group of people that are going to be speaking today on an important topic. And that gets back to something that happened a long time ago, the rape kits that were misplaced. I'm very pleased to report that we've completed the process of testing those 10,000 kits through the state police and made tremendous progress on that. Now it's more a question of turning it over for all the investigations that need to take place. So the work isn't done, but this is a huge milestone in terms of making positive progress, and I want to thank all the people that made this effort happen. The other part I want to remind people is we've actually made some investment in helping put dollars towards prosecutions. So we had some dollars in the budget last year. This year we're making a new investment in terms of additional resources through the state police to actually make sure that as we go forward, rape kits are going to get tested more effectively, faster, and better, and we've got great people to do that. And I know we have a number of people from the Michigan State Police that actually do that work. So I'd ask you stand up, those of you that are involved with the Michigan State Police. I wasn't sure exactly where you were sitting because you tend to do your work well, but you're pretty shy about being identified. So I want to thank you for your great work in doing that. So I appreciate all that. So good things are going on in the state of Michigan on this path, but I think you'll hear that from the speakers that we have today. And this was a team effort, so I do want to thank the people that made all this happen. Again, the Wayne County prosecutor has been very helpful. She's going to speak. The Attorney General's office has been very helpful in this process. The Michigan State Police, the federal government has been a partner in doing some of this work. And I also want to recognize the Michigan Women's Foundation. We have Carolyn and Peggy here today from the Women's Foundation. They're helping raise funds to help on the investigation side. So there's been a lot of great teamwork to make this happen. The last thing I'd like to mention is a related subject that ties into this is the whole topic of sexual assault on campus. This is something that is very close and near and dear to the First Lady's heart, and she's here with us today. So I'm very pleased to be joined by her because that's an effort we're going to stay on top of, in addition to all the rape kit question. This is an area that deserves more attention than it has in the past statewide with our universities and colleges, and we're going to make sure that topic gets attention too. So it's great to be with you, but I'm going to turn it over to people that are more expert at this than I am, that have done this hard work. And again, I want to thank each one of these parties' efforts for the great teamwork that has made this happen. So I'm very proud to turn it over to someone I truly am pleased as I view it as one of my best appointments in terms of getting someone on board. She's done a tremendous job with the Michigan State Police, Colonel Etchew.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Governor Snyder. Today's announcement culminates 5 years of very hard work by the Michigan State Police, our Forensic Science Division, as well as our Biometrics and Identification Division, to seek justice for survivors of rape, and those survivors were from Detroit. Upon discovery of a stockpile of untested sexual assault evidence kits back in 2009, the Michigan State Police joined forces with other stakeholders to begin a process to test these kits. At the time, few jurisdictions had taken on such a challenge, and I'm very proud today to say that based on our actions here in Michigan, we have now developed a model that is actually going to be used as a best practice in the nation. Through 3 distinct projects over 5 years, we've tested a total of 10,087 sexual assault evidence kits from the city of Detroit. To date, we have received 2,616 associations in the FBI's Combined DNA Index System, what we term CODIS. Of special note, these associations have included links to criminal cases in 35 states and the District of Columbia. And there should be a map that we can actually show you here today. Clearly, the efforts that we've taken are not only important to the city of Detroit or to Wayne County, but it's important to the entire state of Michigan, and it reaches way beyond any jurisdictional boundaries. And without the support of our governor, Rick Snyder, and the legislature, as well as our Attorney General, Bill Schuette, to provide funding for this very important forensic science effort, the testing could not have been made possible. So I, too, want to thank the technicians, the scientists, and the staff from the Michigan State Police Forensic Science Division and Biometrics and Identification Division. I know that you have worked nonstop on this, and I'm really proud of the work that you've done. And I'd also like to thank our partners in this, and as you see, Prosecutor Kim Worthy and Debbie Kane, we've worked very closely together on this. So thank you on behalf of the State Police. We're very proud of this announcement here today. With that, I have the pleasure to introduce from the Attorney General's Office, Laura Moody. Laura.
Thank you, Colonel. Our department is proud to be part of this coalition and very proud to have supplied the $4 million taken to test these kits and work toward bringing these offenders to justice. We in the Department of Attorney General consider ourselves and are proud to consider ourselves the voice of victims. And so we are excited, thrilled to be partnering with Governor Snyder, Kim Worthy, Prosecutor Worthy, and Colonel Etchew in bringing these offenders to justice and bringing closure to the victims. The Attorney General is pledging with all the counties that need assistance in testing these kits to bring the kits into the office and send them out to be tested so that every sexual assault kit can be tested. The Attorney General's goal is zero backlog on sexual assault kits in Michigan. The next step, however, is investigation and prosecution. And again, the Attorney General looks forward to partnering with Prosecutor Worthy and all the prosecutors across the state to bring these offenders to justice, those responsible for committing these horrific crimes against the victims in our state. I have the privilege of introducing now someone who needs no introduction in this area because her passion and her dedication in this issue is really unparalleled. Prosecutor?
Thank you very much. I'm thrilled to be here at the invitation of the Governor's Office and Christy Etchew from the Michigan State Police, who have also been our partners for a number of years. We've been working on this issue since they were discovered in Detroit in 2009, and we have been able to get this far through a series of collaborations and partnerships, and these are some of the best partnerships that we have standing before us. But we also have the Forensic Nurses Association, Kim Hurst and her organization, the victim advocates, and others that have worked with us as well. As Laura said, this is the first step, and a very, very important first step, and a step that we could not have gotten to without the assistance of the Governor and the Attorney General, but this is a first step. Next, as has been outlined already, the investigation and prosecution of these kits, the evidence from these kits. It's nice to have them all tested, but it doesn't bring justice to any victim unless we investigate them the way they should have been investigated in the first place and prosecute them as well. To date, we have 21 convictions. And as Colonel Etchew said, we have a number of CODIS hits. We have 106 cases that are actively being investigated right now. We have 1,350 cases that are awaiting investigation after CODIS hits have been made. And that's why we've embarked with the Michigan Women's Foundation and the Detroit Crime Commission, enough said, to raise private dollars for it as well as the public dollars that have been very generously committed to this aspect. We have only now 11 states that haven't been affected by our rape kits in one city, in one county, in one state. Rapists do not stop at 8 Mile Road. And I'd just like to name for you just very quickly the states that have not been impacted, because it's quicker to do that than the 39 others that have been. We have not had case associations in Connecticut or Hawaii or Idaho or Massachusetts or Montana or New Hampshire or Rhode Island, South Dakota, Utah, Vermont, and Wyoming. But all the other states in the United States have had CODIS associations of some kind just from our rape kits. So again, we need to investigate and prosecute them. We're embarking to do that. We're doing the best we can. We have a partnership with the Attorney General's office where we have already referred one case where we found out that the actual rape happened in the city of Southfield, and the Attorney General has generously agreed to prosecute that case for us since it's outside of Wayne County. So we have a long road ahead. Very, very important first steps have taken place, and I'm glad that we're closing the chapter on the testing of these 10,000 kits, but we have a lot more work to do, and we look forward to doing this work and partnering with anyone that we can that's going to help us bring justice to these victims, because after all, that's what this is really about.
Sure. Now we'll have Debbie Kane come up and speak, and I want to thank Debbie for her efforts as Executive Director of the board that handles these matters in terms of sexual assault prevention and treatment. So, Debbie?
Thank you, Governor.
Well, this is really a dream team up here to have the governor of our state, Governor Snyder, our Attorney General, to have Colonel Etchew representing the state police, and the wonderful prosecutor from Wayne County, Kim Worthy, here is truly a dream team. And these partners really represent here today what has been a tenacious and fierce group of advocates who have worked tirelessly to ensure that each and every one of these sexual assault kits were tested. And these same partners additionally worked very closely last year with the legislature to ensure that no such stockpile is ever going to occur in Michigan again. And that's an equally important step in making sure that Michigan can ensure that this is not going to happen again. And as those important tasks have been accomplished, as you've heard from our other partners, it's equally important that we continue to hear the voices of these survivors as we move forward in their new phase, and they will have new phases, many of them, in getting the pursuit of justice that they so richly deserve. But I think you can hear the compassion, the passion, and the commitment that all of these partners have in making sure that that's going to happen, and that's incredibly important. And I just can't say enough about how proud I am here in Michigan, because you don't see this happening in many states, and especially not when we're talking about the volume of kits that we are. This is really an extraordinary situation to be talking about 5 figures of kits just coming from one community, and to have the governor of our state, Governor Snyder, the Attorney General of our state, Attorney General Schuette, the Director of our state police, Director Etu, and Prosecutor Worthy all come together and work so tirelessly and fiercely in trying to rectify this situation, and to know that each of those survivors' voices were heard. So I thank them all for their tremendous efforts, and it's so important that this is happening. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Now we're going to open up for questions, and then keeping with our normal practices, if we could keep the questions on topic first and see what's on your mind. The only other thing I would mention is it's great to have our members of the state police here. I'll say the same thing I do when we have trooper graduation. This is a very serious topic, but you should be smiling because of your hard work today, and you're a very somber group at this moment. So you should be happy and pleased with the great work you've done. I know it's hard work that you do. Questions?
Just a friendly reminder, if you could just say your name and your outlet too for all the folks who are watching via stream. So Rick Pluta, go ahead.
Rick Pluta, Michigan Public Radio. And could you explain, you said that there's a linkage with either cases or suspects in 35 states and in Washington, D.C. What is that linkage?
When we have a CODIS hit, we have what's called case-to-case associations, which means a piece of evidence can link to another piece of evidence that's already in the system. And we also have CODIS hits that can link to a named person that's in the system. So we may have a rape where there's a nightgown, a sheet, and that happened in one place, and we get DNA and CODIS hit off of that, and it may link to another piece of evidence in our particular case. So with that, we have, like I said before, all the hits that we have from the states, and they link either to case-to-case associations or actual people that have been identified in other states, in 39 other states at this point.
You mean suspects?
Yes, suspects or evidence.
Thank you, Paul Egan, Detroit Free Press. And Prosecutor Worthy, you might be the best person to answer this question too. Is it possible to put an approximate dollar figure on what additional resources are now needed to investigate and prosecute these cases?
Yes, it is, and no, it isn't. It is because we have estimated that this is going to take from another 3 to 5 years to get through all the investigations and the completed prosecutions and sentences of these people. But what we don't know is exactly what we're going to find in any given investigation. So we have 106, for example, that we're looking at actively right now. But I don't know if all 106 of those are going to come into cases. So I can't tell you the dollar figure because I don't know how far it's going to go. But I don't want to scare you with the overall figure that I think that it's going to take, but what I can tell you through Enough Said, that's my office, the Michigan Women's Foundation, and the Detroit Crime Commission, we are committed to trying to raise $10 million to get a lot of this work done. But that's not all it's going to take.
And just for your information, Paul, the number is $3 million that was out of last year's budget that's been allocated to the Wayne County, the Attorney General, Michigan State Police to make sure this follow-up is going on while this other process is taking place.
Prosecutor Worthy, Kyle Malin from the MERS newsletter. Just to be clear, you're talking about private dollars you're trying to raise, $10 million in private dollars? And I also want to ask, is there a statute of limitation issue at all that you guys may run into?
Yes, we're trying to raise $10 million in private dollars, yes. And yes, there is. And that was one of our biggest challenges at the very beginning, because these cases now go back 35 years. So obviously a number of those cases and the kits that we have relate back to cases that are beyond the statute of limitations. One of the smartest things the legislature did several years ago is they changed the statute of limitations. There is no statute of limitations on criminal sexual conduct, that's our rape statute, in the first degree. But if it's second degree, third degree, or fourth degree, we are still burdened, for lack of a better word, with that statute of limitations. But it's important to note, it's incredibly important for all the kids who have been tested, because we can use, under the law, evidence in a case that is beyond the statute of limitations in our new cases. It's a very stringent thing that we have to go through before a judge. A judge has to approve that. But we can use evidence in previous cases that we can't directly prosecute in our new cases. And it's extremely helpful when we have serial rapists.
Prosecutor Worthy of Chad Live and Good Detroit News, just to go through a couple of numbers. There's been originally reported that there's 456 links to serial rapists. Is that correct?
477.
477?
Right.
Okay. And then originally there was a number over 11,000, and you've tested 10,000 and some. What happened to the rest? Was there just some that were no longer? It's
11,341. And yes, you're correct. Testing has been done, as Colonel Etchew said, on 10,000. We still have a number of kits that still have to be tested. They were doing that from funds that have already been raised, but there are also some questions about some of the kits that are there. We know that some of them have been tested already, and so we have some questions about some of the remaining kits. So we don't want to submit a kit of that 1,341 that's left when it's already been tested. So these are areas that we're working on, but yes, there is that slight discrepancy. So we have a few more that have to be tested, and we will test all those that haven't been tested before, and that we can prove that have been tested before.
We're going to go back to the room to Tim and then over to Jim.
I'm sorry, Madam Prosecutor, if you could please, would you speak to the women who are part of the 1,300 who have now been told they're going to wait 3 to 5 years to have their cases investigated, as to why that has to occur? And secondly, isn't that justice delayed?
I don't know what you mean by 1,300.
You said there were 1,300 cases that were awaiting review.
Oh, yes, that we already have hits on. Well, it's resource-driven, and so we can only go as fast as the resources that we have. And as money is continuing to be raised and support and pledged, thankfully, from the state and for the private donations, we are hiring more investigators. This is very investigation heavy. These are cases that should have been investigated back in the day. So it's unlike TV, where we see them get a CODIS hit and then run and charge. We can't do that. We still have to investigate the case properly. We have to find the witnesses, find defendants, find the other witnesses, find the evidence, sometimes find the victim as well. And so it takes cases, and we have investigators that have to do that. So we made a decision a long time ago that when we get a CODIS hit, we don't contact the victim then. We contact them when the case is assigned to an investigator. So in other words, so that they don't get their expectations up and they'll have to wait a little bit longer. But yes, there's a secondary backlog that's been created because we don't have the resources to prosecute them all at the same time.
Isn't that justice delayed?
Well, I prefer to look at it as we are eventually going to bring justice to all these victims. And so, like I said, it's very important to know that we don't contact the victim when we get the CODIS hit. We wait until the investigator is assigned. But yes, it's problematic that we are asking victims to wait even longer. And that's why without the state's help, without the federal government's help, without the help we've gotten from our private donations, we wouldn't even be as far as we are now. So it's going to take time and resources. It's a very expensive proposition, and what my office is going to do it right. We're going to make sure that we investigate the cases properly, and then we prosecute them properly. And so we've been very successful so far.
On that same note, Ms. Prosecutor, if you would, Jim Kurtzner with Channel 7, you need $10 million in private donations. You don't have the resources. Does the $10 million hire new investigators,
yes.
new prosecutors?
Yes.
Or are you going to pull from the pool of the state resources, bring in some MSP officers, AG
Both.
officials?
Both.
Okay.
The governor spoke about the $3 million that was appropriated by the legislature. We're going to be hiring prosecutors and a number of investigators. In fact, we're in the process of doing that right now. And with
Can you put a number on those people who will be in these cases in terms of your assistant prosecutors, investigators out on the street, and so on?
The number that we hope to have to get this done?
Yeah.
25 investigators and 15 prosecutors, just assigned to this.
Kim, could I also go back to the prior question? Mm-hmm. I just wanted to comment on victims and justice delayed. Victims are still being encouraged to go ahead and call for victim services. That doesn't mean that they'll necessarily get a prosecution right away, but there are rape crisis services available in the Metro Detroit area. And some victims are calling right now, not knowing where the status of their case is. But that doesn't mean that they can't call for counseling services, and we're encouraging victims to go ahead and do that. Our board does fund a number of services that are available throughout Southeast Michigan and other places, and we encourage them, if they have any concerns about counseling services and that kind of thing, to go ahead and call. And they may want to go ahead and come in and see an individual counselor and that kind of thing. So that isn't the same as getting, their case taken care of right away, but sometimes people are wanting to know if they can come and at least see somebody and talk to somebody. It's also important to know that when we talk about victims' voices being heard, one of the things that Kim has been particularly sensitive to as a prosecutor is that not all victims are necessarily going to want to go forward. For some of them, this has been a really long time. Their lives have changed substantially. And some of them have made a decision that they may not wish to go forward with their case. And it's really important, and Prosecutor Worthy has worked very hard with a multidisciplinary team to look at what's in the best interest of that case, including the interest of that particular victim and that victim or survivor's wishes about going forward. Did you want to add anything to that? So there is a whole victim notification process about, remember, you're talking sometimes 8, 10 years later that you're knocking on somebody's door and saying to them, you haven't heard from anybody for years, and now here we are. We've got a CODIS hit. We're now identifying who your person is. You haven't heard from anybody, and now we're reopening this wound. You may not have been married, now you are, you've got children, your entire life has changed, and we're about to open all of this up for you again. And so there is a whole formal process, and I think that what Wayne County has done is really exemplary. I've worked in sexual assault for more than 30 years and came from the victim advocacy movement. And what Wayne County is doing is really state of the art. We've learned a lot through this process in the last 7 or 8 years that we've been working on this, and we are leading the nation, which is something I think Michigan can be proud of, in looking at victim notification and the work that's being done around how we are giving victims choices and information and that kind of thing. And so really the work that's being done in Wayne County is leading the way. And so in that sense, yes, it's justice delayed, and that's the bad news. But the good news is we've learned a lot from this, and we're paving a lot of ways that actually Prosecutor Worthy and her staff, and through our board, Colonel Etu, the state police are now guiding others, as you heard Colonel Etu say. They're traveling across the country teaching others how to deal with situations just like this. So we've become experts in what we're doing, and we're trying to the best of our ability, use that in a good way. So with survivors, we are becoming very good at learning how to handle this in the best way possible that we can, given the circumstances that we're dealing with.
Just to clarify, are these City of Detroit cases only, or
Yes.
also Wayne County? Just City of Detroit?
These 10,000 are City of Detroit cases only.
Right.
And that's one of the things that they were talking about earlier. The governor and the other partners are looking to expand that across the state, that any jurisdiction that has these cases, first of all, we want them to come forward, and then the Attorney General and the governor want to support them as well.